Alright, people. Midweek report time. Where do we start? Let's start with the news. They broke today. I already done a video on it, but let's talk about it here briefly. Benn will make his return to the ring this coming Saturday. And, obviously a lot of people are upset about this. Obviously a lot of people are upset. They think that, obviously, given the fact, and it is ongoing, the UCAD situation, it means that Benn shouldn't be in the ring. Now, the seeds for this have been in place for months. I mean, Eddie Hearn had been talking about Australia, he'd be talking about Dubai, places like that. I was listening to Dell's video on it, and he pretty much hit the nail on the head, said, we shouldn't really be surprised, this was always going to happen. It was inevitable. The fact that they were looking at other options, they were talking about other licenses, other commissions, etc. This was always going to be a real possibility, and they've gone ahead and done it. Like I said in my video, what more can you do? We just have to see how he looks. I'm interested to see how he looks because, as I said in the video I done on Benn, you're talking about a guy who in 2019 there was people still saying, and people who a lot bigger than I was at the time, still am, who were saying that Benn's going nowhere. Benn's going nowhere, and that was the consensus based upon what we were seeing. There was talk of Benn, Josh Kelly in early 2019. You looked at that and you were like, the skill gap is night and day. For that to turn around in a year, for Benn to look as good as he done only a year later, it is a bit of a head scratcher. So obviously the main talking point is if Benn gets through this fight the weekend, which many expect him to, see what happens with the UCAD situation. But if that's all above board and they just say whatever, or they just don't appeal it, if that does happen, then what happens? Is it going to be Eubank Jr. then? And if it is Eubank Jr., how do you see that going? At the end of the day, as much as people... And look, I've got a lot of reservations about Benn. This whole situation, it doesn't sit right with me, but what can you do? As I've said several times, what can you do? They were already setting the seeds in this months back. The situation doesn't fully sit right with me. If there is still that case looming over, at the end of the day, we still don't know how or why Benn failed those two tests. If the substance was found in him, why was it there? Instead of, technicality is technicality. No, why was it there? And that's what you got to say. But at the end of the day, if UCAD say, right, whatever, we're not going to appeal it, what can you do? In that situation, what can you do? Benn straight away has said that he is insistent that he's putting the welterweight to middleweight division, 147 and 160 on notice. I'm sure he is. I'm sure that many people will be quaking over that in his return, and has welcomed the fight with Triple G, Gennady Golovkin. That's a big name to be that have been mentioned. Triple G was mentioned. I'd take that fight, and I'm sure Triple G would take your head clean off. Even a Triple G who was well past it. I mean, that would be really ugly. That would be really, really, really ugly for Benn. I think he'd get the absolute living crap beaten out of him in that fight. Seriously, like Triple G, even now, Triple G I'd take over Eubank Jr. It'd be competitive, but I would take Triple G, this version of Triple G, over to Chris Eubank Jr. at this stage. Yes, he's definitely past his best, but I guess that's just name dropping. I mean, you could say he's doing what Eubank Jr. used to do, because Eubank Jr. used to constantly mention the Triple G's and Canelos to especially when he had fights up and coming. Even if he knew that there was no, I'll give you an example. When he was in the World Boxing Super Series, when he joined that, he hadn't even had his first round fight in it, but he was dead set in it. I was saying, I want the winner of Canelo Triple G. Oh, they won't fight me. It's like, no, you're in the middle of a tournament. Of course you're not going to fight them. And they're down a weight below you, and you're doing it at 168. So stuff like that always happens, where people will just name drop an opponent, a big name opponent, just for whatever reason, to try and, get them associated with them, or, get people talking about it, which I guess you could say is working. We are. So that's the situation with Benn. Let's see what he looks like on Saturday. Night. He's going to be in there with a virtually unknown Mexican who, he's 3 losses, he's not been stopped yet, and on paper he looks to be a big puncher, but it's a very padded record. Sometimes they do turn out to be a revelation, other times they don't. It seems to me that when they aren't a revelation, they really are bad, but when they are, they're worth watching. That seems to be kind of how it is. I suppose you could say it's like that everywhere, but I'd say in Mexico, to be honest, when you see these guys with the padded records, more often than not, they are actually better than the record suggests. They're crude, but goddamn, they can fight. Holy, they can fight. In terms of other news, Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou, the undercard is reportedly taking shape. Now, I've already talked about this in a separate video, but we'll talk about it here very briefly. The 3 fights that are being listed by Spencer Brown, who is representative for Team Fury, are Joseph Parker versus Simon Keane, Martin Bakole versus Carlos Takam, which is an excellent fight, and Fabio Wadley versus David Adelaye. They're just 3 fights, so that's 4 fights in total. I would imagine, saying that though, normally these Saudi cards, they don't tend to have massively big undercards, if you know what I mean. It's not like you're going to like look at a UK show, where even if it's on pay-per-view, you could have like, 3 or 4 on the preliminaries that they'll just stream to YouTube, and then another 5 or, well, normally about 5. So they would normally in the UK won't have a lot more, but I guess because they're looking for just the biggest money fights, they're not really going to put some of the smaller names on that card, I would imagine. At the end of the day, like, I love heavyweight boxing. I like the fact that there's heavyweights on this card. I'm still not going to buy it, but I will watch it by other means, as Joe Stunner Boxing likes to say, and I'll be keeping an eye on all these fights. The Joseph Parker Simon Keane fight, meh. That's kind of how I've been looking at it. Parker, if he turns up, the Joseph Parker, then he wins that fight fairly easily. He wins it in 5 or 6 rounds. Seriously, he wins it pretty easy. Takam versus Bakole is a great fight stylistically. Yes, Carlos Takam, I think he's 40 now, and it's fair to say he's not at his best. Although saying that, you'd never have known against Tony Yoka. He looked every bit his old self in that fight. So maybe he's having a bit of an Indian summer in his career. Maybe he can turn the clock back one more time. Bakole is a good heavyweight. He's improved. He's deceiving, is Martin Bakole. That's the best way, because there's times I've looked at Bakole and I've just been very underwhelmed by what I've seen by Bakole. And then there's other times, and the funniest thing is when he does turn up, sometimes he doesn't look like he's gonna. If you look at the Tony Yoka fight, he came into that fight not in the best of shape. He certainly came in very heavy, and I kind of thought, hey, how is he gonna? That's not gonna bode well for him. And he was brilliant in that fight. So with Bakole, I think sometimes what you see isn't always what you get. But he should have enough left in the tank. Well, he's loads in the tank, I would imagine, Bakole, to dispatch of Carlos Takam. But it'd be an interesting fight while it goes. And obviously, you Fabio Wadley versus David Adelaye. I like that fight. 2 young, hungry contenders. A little bit upset there's no British title on the line, but I get it. I get why it's not. It's happening in Saudi Arabia. They're going to get way more money to do it. It is a bit of a no-brainer when you think about it like that. I mean, obviously, you're going to want to make the most money. You're going to make the most money fighting over there. Never mind the British title. Not that never mind it, but like, if someone said to you, look, you can fill out the copper box for 80 grand a piece for the British title, or you can forget the British title and make high 6 figures fighting in Saudi Arabia. No brainer, no brainer. And that's me just chucking an arbitrary number out there. God knows it could be higher, because the way that those cards are, some of the money those guys get. So it is a no brainer for both guys. It really is. So that's the undercard taking shape. In terms of Tyson Fury himself, I have a video ready to go on this. I'm just probably going to upload it tomorrow, because it's already ready to go. I'll upload it tomorrow. Carl Froch on his YouTube channel, which I really enjoy. I'm enjoying Carl Froch's YouTube channel. I enjoy listening to Carl Froch more so now. When Carl Froch retired from boxing, he done the punditry with Sky, he done the commentary, and I guess with Carl Froch back then, I don't know what it was. Was he trying to appease Sky? Because he was a lot more biased back then than he is now towards the house fighter. He tried to show boxing knowledge, which he doesn't really have the greatest amount of boxing knowledge, as Carl Froch. But as a pundit, now, certainly now, like in 2023, over the last couple of years, he's just been more kind of when I say outspoken figure is the right word, I don't even really think it's outspoken. He just says it like it is. He says his mind. Whatever he's saying, you can tell that's what he really thinks. Whereas when you hear some pundits, you do wonder, do you really on your hand on heart believe what you're saying? Or are you saying that just for show? Are you saying that just because you're trying to help with the PR of a certain fighter? Carl Froch doesn't do that. With Carl Froch, regardless of whether he knows the fighter or whether he likes him, whatever, if he sees a bad performance, he's going to say it. If he thinks something's as he sees it, he's just going to say it. And I like that about Carl Froch. And I think it's something that we're lacking in punditry now, where it just seems to me across the board, whether it's TNT, Sky, The Zone, it's just so pro home fighter. You know, Adam Smith was horrible for that. I used to like Adam Smith was the worst because he would just not shut up about whatever house fighter it was, and then say the house fighter wasn't doing the best, he'd start telling story like, well, that fighter came and when he was delivering papers, and you're like, you do realize the opponent is hitting him repeatedly with shots, like, and yet you're just deciding to go into story mode. Well done. If I'd wanted to listen to a story, I would have got a podcast, I would have listened to a novel or something like that. I'm watching a boxing match here. He was the worst for that. And you see a lot of that now in boxing with punditry and commentary and stuff like that. Carl Froch is not like that, which is what I like. He had his say on Tyson Fury. Obviously, Tyson Fury had words about him and Tony Bellew at the Francis Ngannou press conference, basically saying that they were small and they just didn't make any money in their careers, and now they're just looking to nitpick and they're jealous because Fury is making big money. Carl Froch correctly said, look, he made enough money in his career, his faculties are all right, he's not short of a few quid, nor is Tony Bellew. They're both happy. He said, and I quote here with Tyson Fury, he said, all right, you're taking the money, that's great, but when your career is over, you want legacy. You want your legacy to be intact. The fans are turning against you. It's sad to see. Deep down, I think you know you're hurting the sport. You're taking the money instead of being full of pride for the sport. And I agree. You can't argue with anything Carl Froch is saying there. You know, it was only this time last year where Tyson Fury was interviewed by True Geordie. Subsequently, he hasn't had another interview. I wonder why. And True Geordie basically just asked him the questions that you want to hear, where he said basically, I'm paraphrasing here, is it about legacy or money? And Fury was saying, it's about legacy, you know, about legacy, blah, 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 blah. And then it was like, but, you know, why shouldn't I get paid and stuff like that? And it's like, is it legacy, is it money? Whereas now he's just come full circle and said, yeah, no, it is about the money. It is about the money. And you know something, right? I don't think many people would have an issue with Tyson Fury coming out and saying, it's just about the money. I just want to fight Francis Ngannou with then John Jones because I want to make the most money. I don't think the majority of people would have an issue with that if Fury said, take the title off me. I don't want the obligations that come with being champion. I don't want the responsibilities. I don't want the mandatories, etc., etc. I just want to make the most money, which I know if I fight the John Jones of the world, the Francis Ngannou of the world, do these little exhibition types, I will get. So that's the real road I want to go down, right? Thank you, boxing. And that's the road I want to go, and it's going to make me a lot of money. You do whatever you want with the title. There it is. If he'd done that, I would say there'd be no shortage of people saying, okay, just do what you want to do. Do whatever you want to do. Yeah, fine. You know, at the end of the day, you're not holding the division up. So if you're not holding the division up, then, yeah, just do whatever. You know, that title can... Usyk can fight for the vacant title, or two guys can fight for the vacant title, and they can make the Usyk fight. The division just carries on. You know, contenders are getting their chance, you know, etc., etc. That's all well and good, if that's what you're going to do. But no, instead he's held on to the title. Sullivan is giving him carte blanche to do whatever the hell he wants, which I think is just completely disgraceful. And Sullivan is not a nice individual anyway. And Sullivan is just not nice. And it's the fact that he says it in such a kind of way where it's like, why should we force a mandatory on him? Well, you've done it with other fighters, so what's the difference? You know, I think that it really is terrible to think that Sullivan, fighters that he likes, fighters who make a lot of money, he's like, do what you want. But fighters who don't, oh no, we'll slap a mandatory on you. And even if you think you're safe, you know, we're slapping mandatories on you left, right and centre. You know, it's one rule for thee and another rule for he. In terms of some other stuff that's going around, I seen this actually. Camille Sakalaski tested positive for a banned substance following a UCAD test. Following his defeat to Fraser Clark last year, he has now been banned from boxing for 3 years. Sakalaski admitted he took supplements which he believes contained the banned substance. Wow. Camille Sakalaski. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I actually thought he retired earlier this year. Maybe preempting this. Maybe he knew full well this was going to happen. I was only singing Camille Sakalaski's praises a few days ago for being one. Well, he is still a journeyman who comes to fight. Well, not anymore. He's gone for 3 years. Probably gone for good now. And yeah, you know, he's saying it was in a supplement. at the end of the day, I know at that level, you don't have nutritionists who are going to look after everything, but then that responsibility is on you then. You know, you should really be looking and saying, okay, is this okay? You know, Dillian White comes to mind, you know, Jack 3D back in the day, you know, I know he was a smaller fighter, a small hall fighter back then, he wasn't making a lot of money, but like something that good that people are raving about, it's only a matter of time before people start, you know, raising an eyebrow. And, you know, that's what happened with Jack 3D. That's why you can still get that today, but I never used it. But by all accounts, before or after, by all accounts, like 2012, that Jack 3D was something else. People who used it told me, they said it was amazing. Whereas today now, it's more like an energy drink. It doesn't really, whatever was in it back then, it certainly isn't in it now. Now, I didn't see any of these fights. There was a card in Japan over the other day, and Yunito Nakatani fought on the undercard. I did see some of the body shots he was letting in on his opponent. I felt bad for him. They looked sore. And I see Ken Shiro stopped Heikki Bundler in 9 rounds. Now, I have to say, forgive my ignorance, I didn't watch either of those fights. I do actually like Ken Shiro. He is a good fighter. He is one of those fighters in Japan that he goes a bit under the radar because he fights at 108 pounds. So there is obviously in that part of the world, the Far East, Far East of Asia, you know, it's the opposite as it is to here. You know, over there, it's like if you are below a certain weight, we want to know. Like they love the 105s, the 108s, the 112s. Whereas over on this end of the pond, it really is the bigger the better. You know, it really is. I mean, like you think about it like this. In the UK, for example, you know, how many people are there in the UK? 60 odd million. How many flyweights and light flyweights do we have? Hardly any. You know, hardly any. You look at America as well, there's not many. And the talent that there is there, it's mainly coming from the far. Obviously, you could say, like, if you look at, like, you know, 112, you would have Sonny Edwards, and you obviously have Bam Rodriguez, yes. But the majority of the weight divisions below, it's all coming from Japan for the most part. It's always kind of been that way. In terms of some of the other news, let's have a little look-see here. I did see that Bob Arum was talking about doing Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk in December. I still maintain that that's wishful thinking from Bob Arum. I'd love it if I was proved wrong by that. I'd love it if it was in December or early Jan. But I got me a feeling that's wishful thinking there, Frank, or Bob. You're so used to saying Frank when it comes to Tyson Fury. Bob Arum. Now, this is an interesting one. So Terence Crawford is insisting that the Errol Spence rematch must happen at 147 pounds or not at all. Their contract allows the loser of the first fight to activate the rematch clause, but the winner gets to decide what weight for the second fight. Apparently Errol Spence wants to do it at 154 pounds, a weight that he would feel a bit more comfy at, whereas Terence Crawford wants to do it at 147 pounds, make a defence of his undisputed title, I would imagine. At the end of the day, if that was the rule that the winner decides the weight, then you ain't got a leg to stand on. Realistically, like if you can activate the rematch clause, which Errol Spence has done, but if it's in the contract that the winner can decide the weight, and he wants to do it at 147, you're contractually obliged to do that. Now you can obviously decide I don't want to do this and then go the other way, but if Terence Crawford wants to do it at 147, you know, that's how it's got to be, as far as I'm concerned. By there, you know, UFC President Dana White has declared that UFC now intend to regularly stage fights on Mexican holidays, as is tradition in boxing, and are willing to go head to head with boxing matches headlined by Canelo Alvarez. I don't like it when promoters in boxing do it, and I don't like why Dana White is doing it. It just seems pretty flippant. That's an ego thing. And it's an ego thing in boxing as well. You know, if Frank Warren puts a show on say, the 9th of December, right, and it's clashing with Ben Shalom and Boxer, right, if they're both putting big names on, you might think, oh, well, all you're doing really is taking away from the fighters. That's really all you're doing by doing that. You know, that fighter who was headlining, say, the Queensbury card, is not going to get the numbers, he's not going to get the fans, he's not going to get anything that he would if it was just him standalone and vice versa to the Boxer show. And it's going to be like that. You're going to have people flicking between both. I mean, do you remember that absolute? And that was a really difficult night, because I think I stayed up for that fight, was when Canelo fought Kovalev, and we were told like 4:30 start, and it was nearly 6 in the morning. getting the fight took off because they had to hold back for an hour because I think Masvidal was fighting in the UFC. That was BS right there. That was BS right there. I hope he doesn't. Like, at the end of the day, like, just please, you know. Now with Canelo, he's not fighting on, obviously Mexican Independence was last weekend, I think. Yeah, it was. He's fighting next weekend against Charlo. Looking forward to that. Really looking forward to that. And then you would imagine that he'll have a fight. He normally fights the first week in May. That's Cinco de Mayo, isn't it? I think it is anyway. So that's normally his dates. They're normally his dates, May and September, just like Floyd Mayweather when he was fighting. Ryan Garcia has teased a big fight in the works for February next year. He's having a comeback fight apparently on November the 18th. Oscar De La Hoya told reporters that the Super Bowl weekend, February 10th, the target is Devin Haney or Teofimo Lopez. I also seen that, naming the guy, O'Hara Davis is set to fight Ishmael Barroso for the vacant WBA 140-pound title. Now, I was saying that Davis's best chance of winning that title was against Rolly, because Rolly is garbage. He might have a chance. Well, he'll have a good chance against Ishmael Barroso, I would imagine. Ishmael Barroso, God knows how old he really is, but 40, even that's being generous. They were meant to fight. I'm really sure they were scheduled to fight a few years ago. Might have been 2021 or 2022 in Dubai or somewhere like that. I think it was on those El Chapahan shows that they used to do over there, part of that managerial company. I'm nearly sure that fight was either signed and it didn't happen, or O'Hara Davis ended up fighting someone else. I'm nearly sure I was associating Barroso's name with O'Hara Davis before. Could be wrong on that. I'm also seeing that Tony Yoka is reported, I've seen this, someone post this in the Element group, that he's reported to have now left Virgil Hunter, which I guess is overdue. He wasn't looking great with Virgil Hunter. The rumour is he's gone to Don Charles. Okay, I mean, London is not far from France. I mean, you get the train back to Paris. But, really? Don Charles? Okay. I mean, it's okay. Just gonna, okay. Oscar De La Hoya has also told reporters that he wants to make Camille Munguia versus John Ryder, or potentially Chris Eubank Jr. next. I don't see them getting Chris Eubank Jr. in with Munguia, but John Ryder against Munguia, yeah, I'd watch that. You'd have both are DAZN fighters, Matchroom versus Golden Boy, easy to make, you would imagine, same platform, same network, pretty much. Both promoters have deals with DAZN, so yeah, I'd be all for that. I would favour Munguia over John Ryder, I would, but it'd be interesting. Munguia's really stagnated over the last couple of years. Finally, to end on this, we obviously have this card coming up over the weekend. Joyce, Zhang 2. Once we finish this, I'm going to record my prediction. Excuse me, I'll upload that tomorrow morning probably, because I like to premiere these on a Wednesday or a Thursday. So we're going to premiere this about 8:30, 9 o'clock. And then we'll do, I'll record Joyce, Zhang 2. The rematch prediction straight after this. But in terms of the card, I like the card. It's a good card. Zach Parker in there, Sam Noakes, Anthony Yard. His opponent is still TBA. Frank Warren's go-to guy. Tried and tested. Frank Warren has seen TBA since the dawn of time. He's made TBA famous, has old Frank. But yeah, TBA is Anthony Yard's current opponent. Can't imagine it's going to be anybody good on a day's notice. It's probably going to be someone absolute. It's going to be a runaround, which is what we're used to at this stage from Anthony Yard. It was fine 6-7 years ago. It ain't fine now. That's what I'll say on that. Tommy Fletcher. Looking forward to seeing Tommy Fletcher. You know, Mark Tibbs been bigging him up as a big puncher. He's in there with a guy who's 3-4. Alberto Tapia from Spain. But yeah, Tommy Fletcher is an interesting watch. The Norfolk Nightmare. Big puncher this guy is, so it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. Young Moses Atauma is there as well. He is another fighter who I'm very interested in. I really enjoy watching him. I'm really enjoying watching and seeing how his career is progressing, so he'll definitely be one to have a look at. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, I think that is pretty much it. So that's pretty much the weekend of itself. So I hope you enjoyed the video, people. Smash the like button if you could. Subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. Plenty of content coming your way over the next few days. Like I said, I've got a video in the pipeline for tomorrow at some point. Well, it's recorded. It's actually uploaded. I just haven't unlisted. I'll decide when to live it. And then obviously we have the prediction video, which I'm going to record literally as soon as I get this video uploaded, and then we'll record that, get that out tomorrow. I'm looking forward, because I've been looking at these two a lot and thinking about this, that, and it's interesting. It's a very interesting fight for me, very interesting. So I'll leave you with that. You'll see that tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed the video, people. Smash the like button if you could, and subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. For now, lads and lassies, I'll leave you with that. Peace.